When I think of a resilient region or anything with resiliency, it's the ability to adapt to change. Things are coming, things are going to be different, and a resilient region can deal with it. One way or the other, we need to be proactive. So if we're a resilient region, we're proactive about dealing with the issues that are facing us. The reason why it's important to actually try to be resilient is you can wait until everything kind of like falls apart, and then you can try to put it back together. But you're never going to be as effective as you were if you were proactive to begin with. As we worked on the Resilient Region Plan, we realized there's lots of different pieces of it. And so what we ended up doing is calling these themes. When we think about these 11 themes, they pretty much cross all of our lives. And they do affect us on different levels. Economic engines we can think about as really big picture, for instance. What are those business clusters? Manufacturing, certain types of manufacturing, ag, tourism, all of these different pieces that are these big things out there that cross our region. But at the end of the day, it's a job for somebody. An effective economic engine provides jobs for people. When it comes to workforce and education, that type of a piece and that type of a theme, it means that people are prepared to take that job and be able to do something with it and make a good living for their family. And if they can make a good living for their family, then they can give back to their community. They can take the time perhaps to be on a city council or serve on a nonprofit. All of these things are interconnected. That's how innovation happens. You don't get much innovation around housing, believe it or not, if you just sit in a room with a bunch of housing folks. Those folks basically know the same things. But if you get housing folks together with economic development folks and land use folks and transportation folks, they're all coming from a little different angle. And if they sit down together, they can begin to take something that works in one of those areas and begin to apply it in a new way in one of those other areas. One of the approaches we've taken with the Resilient Region Plan as we've looked at these themes, we didn't have a lot of money. And so there wasn't going to be any money for us really for implementation. And so as we thought about that, we thought, how can we move these themes forward? How is that going to work? And what we decided was, let's try to have what we called champions for these themes, who would basically take some time and effort to try to make those connections and look for innovation like we've been talking about. And so these people are volunteers, they give of their time, and they try to connect with a larger network of people. The theme that I'm working on and have been working on with others is called Changing Populations. And it's a little bit tricky because it really involves two things that are really pretty different, though they're related. The first one is aging population. That one's relatively simple to measure because we know we're getting older. The other one, though, is our changing ethnic makeup in our area, in our region. When we think about that changing population theme, and we think about the aging piece of it, for instance, we realize that it also relates to housing, it relates to transportation, it relates to health care. Those are probably the three most common pieces, but it also relates to connectivity as far as broadband. Really, we find that it relates to a whole bunch of things. And the reason it relates to health, for instance, is that the longer people can stay healthy, the longer they can stay independent in their own homes, in their own communities. The reason it relates to transportation is that in the kind of communities we have, if you're out on the farm and you're by yourself and you can't drive anymore, how do you get to health care? And then how it connects to health care is maybe you don't have to drive into health care if you have good internet access, because maybe some of those services could be delivered to you and some of those connections could be over the internet and the phone together with healthcare professionals. When it comes to the area of ethnic breakdown, then we really get involved in education and workforce as being a big connecting factor. Because we know that people of color are going to make up an awful large part of our younger people in the future. And so we really need to be thinking about education, the achievement gap, and quite frankly, some of the vestiges of racism that still exist in our communities that we need to work through. I think what it really takes with the Resilient Region Plan and any of the themes, people being willing to think in new ways, people being willing to put aside the way we've always done things and to be willing to change some of our old ways of doing things in order to get a better result. So when we think about the Resilient Region Plan and we think about over 100 recommendations, and all of these goals. Some things can happen relatively quickly around the edges, but a lot of it's going to take time. The other thing we have to remember is we're never done with it. I hate to say that in a way, but when it comes to innovation and being resilient, the whole thing about being resilient is being resilient and able to deal with change. Change is not going to end. It's just going to keep coming at us. So if we're going to be a resilient region, what we need to do is to learn how to deal with change and keep doing it. When I look into the future, what our hope is kind of twofold. One thing, of course, is that within our 5-county region, we have a better quality of life, we adapt to this change, we're resilient, and we're stronger because of the fact that we've been proactive. We've come up with new ideas, new ways to address problems that we haven't thought of before. When I look broader than just us, we can obviously be a model for other people. And hopefully other people can learn from our mistakes and our successes going forward.